Folks, thank you very much for coming this evening, 25th of September 2019. This is the 5G Apocalypse, the London event, and it augurs the beginning of a tour of cities, which we are going to be variously involved with ourselves and helping to orchestrate in the coming months. I don't suggest it's going to be in the coming years, because we do not, alas, have years for this particular issue. This is an existential crisis. And for those who choose not to look this way, fair enough. But there are many people who are conscious, who are profoundly concerned at what is taking place. And what is taking place in the simplest possible terms is what appears to be the early stages of an unprecedented crime against humanity. When a technology, a stealth technology, which is demonstrably, evidentially, a weapon system, a metadata surveillance system, when such an apparatus, such a system is deployed on our streets, in our cities, in our homes, in our schools, classrooms, buses, taxis, public buildings, every square inch of planet Earth is destined to fall within the draconian reach of Skynet. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not within the realm of theoretics. This is factuality. It is stark, it is technicolored, and frankly, it is terrifying. So I salute you, each of you, for coming here this evening and helping to support us and make yourselves heard, make us heard. I'm going to play a short clip now to begin. People are still coming in. We've received a lot of calls saying people are stuck in traffic. I apologize to those of you who had difficulties getting here. But we do need to start now. We've got the UK Police and Crimes Commissioner, Anthony Stansfeld, in Oxford, who's going to be coming in on the line in about an hour from now, and we need to get through a couple of keynote presentations before that time. So without further ado, I'm going to begin a short clip which is excerpted from the film that I made a short while ago called 5G Apocalypse, the Extinction event. This one has been reduced down to only a few minutes, about 7 minutes, I think. But this is just to help those of you who are not familiar with the full scope of what we're talking about. This clip is designed to contextualize what these presentations this evening are addressing. Thank you for your patience.
It's important to understand what the 5G is doing and what they say it's doing. We're told on the IEEE beamforming document that this technology cooked your eyes like eggs in World War II. And you all need to understand these are military weapons. These are assault frequencies. If you garner nothing more than that, that's what you need to know. It's microwave radiation warfare. This is what this is.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the National Press Club Federal Communications Commission Chairman Tom Wheeler.
It's an honor to be here at the National Press Club. The first generation wireless, 1G, was voice. The second generation, 2G, allowed both talk and text. The third generation, 3G, the internet, in a limited way. And today's technology, 4G, completed that digital migration. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way.
All right, let's get a breakdown. Let's tell the people what this really is. This is the 5G transmission device. Blinking heck, that's a hell of a beast, that, isn't it? These are the uninsurable transmitters. Just get a good look at that, guys, because obviously I know there's quite a few experts who want to see more detail about the transmitters and the chipsets. Just have a good look, boys. This is the control management system masquerade. There's an antenna there, you see that? What is this phased array antenna here? What's that? This is for phased array, alright? As you'll see, it's got a driver, it's got some chip there. It's one chip. Look at the chipsets on this. This is your dystopian world. What did Gated Council say? I'll tell you what, I think we better send some of these educated fools back to school, or just send them to prison, whichever's the easiest. I think prison's probably better. Alright, that's 5G, guys. That's 5G hardware.
You must consider the whole part played by electricity in nature. Human beings cannot go on developing in the same way in an atmosphere permeated on all sides by electric currents and radiations. It has an influence on the whole development of man. This life of men in the midst of electricity, notably radiant electricity, will presently affect them in such a way that they will no longer be able to understand the news which they receive so rapidly. The effect is to damp down their intelligence. Such effects are already seen today. Even today, you can notice how people understand the things that come to them with far greater difficulty than they did a few decades ago. Rudolf Steiner, 1924. Rudolf Steiner noted that in 1924, since then our atmosphere has become far more permeated with electric waves of widely diverse types. There's no doubt now that electric waves, electromagnetic forces, cause direct biological effects. There's thousands of peer-reviewed papers on this subject. There's no doubt about it. But what are these effects? How are they affecting us? What can we do about it? We're now at a stage where we're putting in what's called 5G, which is a special type of broadcast for high-density information transfers. And it turns out that this is the same frequency bands that are used in crowd dispersal weaponry.
Is it true?
It could be.
No, well, very few cases. There was an unfortunate incident out in Iowa. Look, gentlemen, practice these words in front of the mirror. Although we are constantly exploring the subject, currently, there is no direct evidence that links cell phone usage to brain cancer.
There are dozens and dozens of studies that show beyond any doubt what this radiation is doing to our sperm. Now, if you take the cell phone out of your pocket, the sperm will recuperate within 3 to 4 months. What would not recuperate would be the damage to the DNA of the sperm. That is irreparable. The wife of the ex-governor of Indiana was diagnosed with glioblastoma. Same brain tumor Ted Kennedy had and John McCain had. Did you look at John McCain's scar? This is a cell phone brain tumor. LeBron James, one of our sports people, had a salivary gland tumor. That is another cell phone tumor. You didn't hear about it because immediately after that was discovered, he was paid by Samsung to become their spokesperson.
Faster, better, more reliable internet. That's the promise of 5G technology, but there is also the peril. Health hazards associated with radio frequency that is higher also and requires more transmitters and antennas. And the stark, simple fact is the health hazards are unknown and unstudied. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having this hearing. 5G, as you well know, also uses higher frequency waves that don't travel as far and will rely on a network of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of small cell sites. And the question then is, are there any health implications, any public safety implications to those additional sites that are likely to be located close to homes, schools, workplaces, and closer to the ground? Correct?
Correct, Senator. Yes.
So my question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Perry, how much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? I stress independent research. Is that independent research ongoing? Has any been completed? Where can consumers look for it? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
Thank you, Senator. I think, thank you for your focus on the issue. Safety is paramount, and as you alluded to, we rely on the expert agencies, we rely on the findings of the FDA and others as to the requirements to keep all of us safe. There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now. Happy to visit with you as to what opportunities you think there needs to be more studies, and we're always for more science. We also rely on what the scientists tell us.
So essentially, the answer to my question, how much money? Zero.
I can certainly follow up with you, Senator. To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
Anybody else know of industry commitments to back research, fund it, support it, to ascertain scientifically the health effect?
No, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of flying blind here, so far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Realizes a little about what it is that we're facing, and certainly what it is that we're doing here, which is to really apprehend head-on the government's, local authorities, health and safety standards and regulatory authorities, governments and multilateral associations like the United Nations, World Health Organization, and so on. They are mandated to do this stuff. They're not doing it. There has been no testing for safety on 5G. Now, I will introduce you to the esteemed panel. On my right is Paramount Chief Sylvestre, Gnakale of the Ivory Coast, Jacques Bauer, who is a clinical pharmacologist. Is that correct? Clinical pharmacist. A clinical pharmacist and a biohazard environmental scientist and researcher who's flown in with his team today from Switzerland. On my immediate left is Dr. Chris Cleverly, a barrister, a fine human, and an associate justice with the International Tribunal for Natural Justice. The ITNJ, a few weeks ago, seated the inaugural seating of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into Weaponization of the Biosphere. That judicial inquiry is underway. We took expert testimonies over 2 days from leading figures in around the world in vaccination programs, in big pharmaceutical crimes, in agrochemical crimes, in geoengineering, in genetic modification, in all of these perverse areas of focus. We've taken the expert testimony of the leading figures, more or less, in these fields, and that Judicial Commission will make its findings heard and known later next year. We're going to see the presentation by Jacques Bauer, who flew in this morning from Switzerland, and he's been conducting some clinical trials on a technology which is able to remediate 5G. There is a glimmer of hope on the horizon. There are actually 2 extant technologies that we are aware of, and we've been conferring for some time now, and investigating what the options might be for humankind as we tiptoe further and further toward this perilous ledge which 2019, 2020, 2021 has promised will augur the onset of 5G and Skynet, with hundreds of thousands of satellites in the sky, all sending down signals, ensuring the weaponization of street lamps and of LED light bulbs, and God knows what else. So Jacques Bauer is a scientist, a researcher, an environmentalist, a biohazard expert, and to that end, we greatly welcome him. Please say thank you to Jacques and show him a warm welcome, having come all the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a really great honor for me to be with you tonight. And I really would like to thank from the bottom of my heart Sacha Stone for having organized such an event, which is really a critical one for the future of our humanity. Just a few words about myself. I'm a clinical pharmacist, but I'm also clinical research associate. I used to work 3 years in what became one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. And among other tasks, I used to have the role of conducting clinical research on the central nervous system as well as the immune system. And you most probably know that the immune system plays a significant role in our identity first, but also on our survival capacities, since almost 95% of all diseases which have been investigating so far are directly or indirectly connected to the good or bad functioning of the immune system. And the immune system is also very much at stake when we are talking about the electromagnetic fields and whatever created by man towards our biologic system. I'm also a consultant and specialized in environmental health, but also in quantum biology. And I have to see this in the light of what I will present and unveil to you tonight. The reason why I take the liberty to speak to you about electromagnetic fields, we had an award-winning research at the International Exhibition of Invention in Geneva, 2 golden medals, plus the public prize in 2012 and 13, with an eminent searcher, Mr. Sylvestre, with whom we were able to show how those EMF for electromagnetic frequencies were really affecting our biological systems. The challenge we are facing today, ladies and gentlemen, can be summarized around what you see here. We've got problems about finances, stress, psychosocial burden, professional environment, habitat and living environment, environmental pollution, population explosion, pharmaceutical drugs, sedentary lifestyle, hyperacidity, falling, sleep challenges, food challenges, water quality, but also, of course, and we will, of course, concentrate on this tonight, electrosmog and whatever is linked to this. What is electromagnetic pollution? We've already unveiled a little bit during the previous talks, but electromagnetic pollution, in order to make it simple, also called electromagnetic smoke or electrosmog or e-smog, is a resonance field coming from a non-natural electromagnetic waves. And this is clear that we are more and more subject, without realizing it, to an even more impressive quantity of electromagnetic waves coming from all sides and on all frequencies. In fact, we are constantly bathing in a cloud of electromagnetic pollution, invisible to the naked eye, but very real. There are very unfortunately so many people thinking, falsely of course, that what they don't see does not exist. As far as I know, gravitation is not seen, but you are all down and not up, which means that there is probably something to understand in that thing. I would recommend you an application which is very helpful, which is called Architecture of Radio, which is an application available on Android or iOS, etc. And on this, you will see on real time if all those waves were seen in the range of what human eye can see. This is how it would look like, and you can really see it directly. And if all those waves, all those electromagnetic waves which are surrounding us, if they were visible, you today, tonight, would be blind not longer than 5 centimeters, because all the rest will be a massive cloud that your eyes would not even be able to look through. So this is about, of course, 5G. Mark wisely talked about the smart meters. There are some smart meters in France called Linkies, and which are really devastating. We've got some evidence about that. And of course, all the things that you are related to, consciously or not, during every day of your life now. The evolution of electromagnetic pollution, about 150 years ago, you had 0 hertz. Electrosmoke did not exist. In the 80s, we were around 50 hertz. And today, the frequency is about, for any phones that you are buying from the shop next to your home, it's about 2.5 gigahertz, which is 2.5 billion hertz, which is 2.5 billion vibrations per second, which means that now with 5G, we are now reaching 100 gigahertz, which means 40 times faster. It's not only 1 unit more, because we are coming from 4 to go to 5. It's 40 times higher. It's almost logarithmic. So it means that since 150 years, the level of frequencies is 500 million times faster than what your cells, every of your single cells, was originally previewed to function with. Different frequencies to which we are subject, for example, 1 hertz is 1 vibration per second, 1 kilohertz is 1,000 vibrations per second. So we are very much talking about vibration. But you have to know, just for reminding you, that the frequency of a body cell is only 7.83 hertz, and this is also called or known under the resonance of Schumann, who was a physicist in the 1950s, who discovered that our on Earth was also based on that frequency. Now you've got induction plates between 20 and 50 kilohertz, you've got Hertzian television, etc., and the 5G that is the subject of tonight, which is about 100 gigahertz. What is the impact on health? And that's what I would like just to briefly cover with you. Numerous studies on the impact of electromagnetic pollution on health, both French and international, reveal that excessive exposure to electromagnetic fields as a consequence of the development of even more numerous technologies, and which have become ubiquitous, sorry for the pronunciation, causes many major disorders of growing importance. Over 1,000 research studies have linked electromagnetic radiations to important biological effects. And one of the most authentic and widely circulated was the Bioinitiative report in 2012, written by an independent group of scientists, concluded that yes, the EM air are significantly affecting human beings. And there is something very important, because Mr. Gnakale was talking about the spirituality. And that's very important to know that we've got something, some little organ in the head, which is called the pineal gland, if you heard about, and which is really something which seems to be like a connection with our higher self. So you have to know that the research further suggests that this pineal gland senses the daily changes of the Earth's magnetic fields and utilize this information to regulate or wake up and sleep cycle. Studies demonstrate that EMR can suppress the secretion of melatonin from the pineal gland at night, the main hormone that regulates our wake up and sleep cycle. Always good to know. This is a man in Switzerland. That's the way he's living now, because he became so hypersensitive to those electromagnetic frequencies that he made lots of wars against that, and saying la téléphonie mobile rend malade et tue, mobile phones make sick and kills. The impact on health. EMR pollution may be the most significant form of pollution human activity has produced this century, all the more dangerous because it is invisible and insensible. And that's the problem. Let's imagine you are putting your hand on a hot plate. You take it back immediately because you feel it, because you are equipped to have senses which are giving you the indication that a danger is about to threat you. But it does not function the same way with the electromagnetic waves, because we were not originally equipped to have that kind of sensor, and therefore, of course, the very big risk, and mainly for pregnant women, newborn babies, we'll talk about that later on, and children, because that's really the most important people we have to talk about, because they are our future. They are more prone to the health risk associated with the MR because their immune system is less developed than the one of adults, have smaller brain size, thinner bones, and larger water capacity. And you can already see here, that was back to 1996, that was done by Dr. Gandhi at the University of Utah. You could see how much those waves are penetrating the brain of a 5-year-old child or 10-year-old child or an adult. And you can see here that we've got more than 75% of the whole brain of this child, which is taken by those waves. This was measured with infrared technology, by the way. Now, on May 11th, 2015, 190 scientists coming from 39 countries working in the field of electromagnetic fields issued an emergency appeal to the UN, World Health Organization, and UNEP, which is the United Nations Environment Programme. As of January 1st, 2019, there were 247 scientists from 42 countries. I would bet they cannot be all wrong. So on May 23rd, 2019, 180 scientists and doctors from 36 countries this time launched a global 5G alert. As of May 23rd, 2019, 93,532 signatories from 170 countries, scientists like me, doctors, members of environmental organizations, citizens, have launched a global alert on 5G. You can see that this is gradually increasing, and again, they cannot be all wrong. A few minutes of exposure to electrosmoke make the blood-brain barrier porous, allowing the heavy metals and toxins to pass and invade the brain. Just after a couple of minutes, you've got your iPhone or whatever smartphone next to your ears. And this is what the BAFU, German National Institute for the Environment, writes about smoke. Epidemiological studies have shown that non-thermal radiation has a significant influence on our brain activity. Physiological changes have also been observed in these cells. And this is one of the most important, to my mind, analysis which has been done by Dr. Wilhelm Musgeler in September 2016, and which has shown even minimal exposure to electromagnetic fields create a cellular disturbance that contributes to oxidative stress, cell aging, and DNA toxicity, what we usually call clustergen effects. So the summary of the results of these three researches has shown that 1, the memory capacity affected people in the domain of electrosmoke drops, the reaction time decreases. Let's think about pilots in plane, for example. Reaction time decreases, okay? And decisions are often wrong. Secondly, the anomalies cytotoxic massively. The cells and the tissues are damaged, causing diseases. They are really augmenting massively. Third, cell oxidative stress appear. The body is too acid. Stress and pressure makes their appearance. And finally, there is something which is very important, because you could see on Mark's presentation sometimes these three words, or these three initials, SAR, which means that you are, if you want, you are trying to consider the quantity which is around you, and that can be measured with this machine that we've seen before, this device. But this is not the important aspect to be taken into consideration. But what is really important is to know what does it do to your body, to your biological cells, you know? And one of the very important and impressive results that I've seen comes from the Imperial College in your own city, London. And this was written by Dr. Andrew Goldsworthy, who is Bachelor in Science, PhD, retired biologist with Imperial College, London. And he started to make a study between 1975 and 2010. And the blue line that you can see here, the blue curve, is indicating how the intensity of those electromagnetic waves has risen up. But the red curve that you can see here, which is very interesting also, is the number, the growing number of cases of autism, which seems to prove that autistic cases are also strongly related. I don't want to claim that this is the only cause, but autistic cases are strongly related to the presence of those electromagnetic waves. And one of the proofs that we have, and you will never find that on internet, is that there is a city in the world where the number of autistic cases per birth is the highest. Guess where it is? It's not New York, it's not Moscow, it's not Los Angeles and whatever. And there is a doctor in France, Dr. Jacques, who wrote it in his book. The city in the world where the number of autistic cases is the highest is called Samsung City in South Korea. Guess why? Now, there is also something that you are observing, I'm sure, around you or in the United States or wherever, that we have really a raise up of violence in schools between kids themselves. They are shooting themselves and whatever. And there is a reason for that, and this reason is not new. That's the reason why I found out a publication published at the WHO in 1984. Swedish professor Johnston and Aronson demonstrated that the pulsed electromagnetic radiations emanating from computer screens causes what we call the inversion of adrenaline, which is a stress hormone contributing to aggression and violence, excretion curves in the urine of human adult beings, and this from the 4th hour of daily exposure to cathodic stream. It's very important to remember that 30,000 years ago, when you had an old prehistorical time, and a man, for example, who was facing a wild beast, what was his options? Either he could fight or, yeah, exactly, there were the two options. But in order to do that, there was a very important peak of stress. And this peak of stress was acting on the, what we call the adrenal glands, which were producing a lot of cortisol and adrenaline, because this adrenaline helped the muscles to function at their best, because either you wanted to fight that wild beast or you wanted to run away, you needed to have your best muscles. And this level of stress is so important that you might remember that that was probably in 1967, there has been the case of two mothers in Mexico able to lift up a 40-ton bus by themselves with their own hands because the baby of one of them was just lying under the tire, and they were able to do that. We never know what is our real potential until we are facing a situation where we discover it. But the problem is that now, when you see those geeks sitting on their bottom for 18 hours, playing those death games, because that's all what it's all about, they've got those level of stress, But the problem is that they are not moving their bottom, they are not moving their muscles. Therefore, all this adrenaline, which is secreted in the whole body, will start returning itself against them and raising up the violence. Now, start to understand why are we finding so many cases of violence and unmastered violence. Because there is another thing that you should know, ladies and gentlemen. When we are facing those electromagnetic waves, being 5G or whatever, we've got what we call two brains. We've got the left part of the brains, which is usually considered as the rational part of the brain, and we've got the right part of the brain, which is more the emotional, the creativity, artistic, and whatever. But between those two parts, there is a central part that we call corpus callosum. And this corpus callosum is made of a network of 750 billion neural cells, and they are transmitting the information and the communication. They are easing the communication between the left part of the brain and the right part of the brain. But less than 10 minutes after you've been exposed to the electromagnetic waves of a cell phone, for example, this acts like a sponge. It will totally take, like impregnates all the waves which are around, and the result is that the communication between the left brain and the right brain cannot be done anymore, or at least is severely reduced, which explains why nowadays we can find cases where students are killing their teacher just because they gave him a bad note or whatever, because they don't have anymore the control of their morality, because the connection between those two parts in the brain has been cut. That's what we are facing now. There was also a reference of Mark about this. This is a study that I made personally in one of the 5 best institutes in the world as regards the scientific research. And this is very interesting. You can see here blood analysis and samples of 5 people that have been selected and which are looked at the dark microscopic side. And you can see those little red cells here, which are our red cells, in fact, which are the cells which are bringing oxygen into the body. And you can see that they are in a harmonious media that you can see here. They've not been exposed to EMF. Now, what you can see here is the same people, the same subject. And you see that they've, in fact, they have called 10 minutes with their mobile phone. And what you see here is that because there was a protection which was made at that time, that's about 10 years ago, you could see that the pattern is almost similar between the left column and the right column. However, if you look at the right, extreme right column now, these are the same people, the same 5 people, and they took some blood samples directly from the ear, because that's a rich, vascularized place. And you can see that suddenly everything is changing. And I'm taking the liberty to share that with you, because that's very much to do with the babies and the newborn and the strokes that Mark was mentioning before. What is happening? You can see a lot of change. You can see a lot of spaces, lots of lost harmony, and you can see that all those little red cells are almost no more visible. And the reason is very simple. In every red cell, you have a little atom, which is called iron, which is here in order to connect with the oxygen, to bring it to the rest of the body. But in the presence of electromagnetic fields, the iron becomes magnetized in such a way that they are behaving like magnets. And what does a magnet when it encounters another magnet? They collapse together, and that's exactly what is happening, but in your brain. And this is the reason why 30 years ago, I think that the average of cerebral stroke of people was around 60 years. And now the average has dropped down to 25 years. But even more and even worse, I have to claim that in France, for example, last year there were more than 2,000 babies who were born with a cerebral stroke. Guess why? So simple. Mothers are pregnant, they are starting to work in their respective places, offices or whatever, and then after a couple of weeks or months, what will they do? They are getting back to home, they will lay down on the bed, they will put their computer, portable computer, on their belly, and they will start to call their friends all the day because that's the only thing that they can do. And that's the reason why we have more and more newborn nowadays with cerebral stroke, to the point that there was even a website set up in France by parents who are totally ignorant about that. Medicine cannot tell them what is the cause of it, and we have it right in front of our eyes. And that's the reason why I was saying that for the sake of the children, everybody of us have to know this. Okay, vulnerability of the human brain. There is a study which has been done in Germany, and we have children which were looking at the television for less than 1 hour a day, 40 minutes. And we asked them, they were between 5 and 6 years old, and we asked them to look at themselves and to write, or how would I say, to picture themselves. And this is how they did it. And now the same children, after 1 month, have looked at the television or watched the television for more than 3 hours a day. And we ask them the same again, to look and to picture themselves. And this was the result. And that's the same who wrote himself, or not wrote himself, who drawn himself, and the same that you are looking here. And you can see that the results are just devastating, because we could notice that the brain activity is at least 2 years less developed than what they used to be when they were not looking or not watching the television before. So that's where the study has been carried. That was in Germany. And the conclusion was television prevents optimal deployment of brain function. So there are a lot of consequences on health that you can see here, and electromagnetic pollution can be the cause or an aggravating factor of many pathology. And this is a non-exhaustive list. And if you have one or more of these symptoms, maybe you are impacted or intolerant to electromagnetic fields. That's a question. That's a very important question, because otherwise I'm wondering why people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs limit the amount of time their children use technology. They raise their kids tech-free, and it should have been a red flag, which obviously was not. So according to recent scientific results, electrosmog is divided into 2 main groups. We've got the thermal effect that we can measure with those machines here, but we've got the non-thermal effects. So the thermal effects of the electrosmog can be measured by the SAR I was mentioning before, specific absorption rate, which is just a measure of the external impact of this electromagnetism on your brain and on your body. But there are some non-thermal effects of the electrosmog, which are very important, and which are affecting all the biologic parts of your body. And this makes a generalization of previously found results virtually impossible, and pushes researchers to focus on a specific application which makes the most sense for their goals as part of their research. Now, the environmental pollution, and this is a slightly better news now, although it's an invisible evil, but very real, we've got some possibilities to measure it. And I'm very happy to have that machine or device, which is usually used in the spatial research centers in Russia, which is called Gnakale. And this is extremely interesting, because within 5 minutes, you can have a state of the autonomic nervous system, of the endocrine system, state of psycho-emotional system, and all those things that allows you to have a very quick understanding of what is happening not outside of the body, but inside of the body. And I just would like to show you a couple of examples, like the measurement performed on a 54-year-old man under the influence of an induction cooker. You could see that the first reading was before he used it, and you can see some numbers like the balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic systems the energy, level of energy, as well as the endocrine system, central nervous system. And which is extremely interesting is to see that after use, you can see that all numbers are worsening in a very worrying manner. The same with the electric activity of the brain, the biorhythm, which are the natural rhythm of biological organism, but also the chronological age versus the biological age, which is the age of vibration of the cells, which most of the time is a question of vibration, so it's not linked to your chronological age. I would like to show you the results by using this technology. Of course, I don't have time to develop it further, but the measurement results on people under influence of Linky, which are smart meters, and or 5G. These measurements were done in France last July, and the only thing that you can conclude is that most of the 250 people which have been measured and which are exposed to the 5G or to the smart meters, their brain becomes burned. All of them without a single exception. And you can see that here, all of them are corresponding to a very high level of stress. What are the solutions? There are two solutions that we found out that I would like to share with you during this time. The first one is called 5G BioShield USB key. Here is how it looks like, and this is a little one that Sacha and I have here on the computer, which is also coming from a Russian technology and which attracted our attention because this was originally developed after Fukushima to protect the Russian territory against the radioactive activity of the things. Yes, absolutely. And it was very successful because you haven't heard about Russia being invaded by those waves, and we know now why. And the Russian technology has led to a military patent, and as I said, it was originating from Fukushima. And there is a real adaptation to the other environmental threats like EMF, 5G, etc., based on the technology which is called plasmoidic activity, which is biphasic, which means that it can work with a charger, as it is the case here, but also if you are walking on the street without charger, it will charge itself with your own body field, which is something absolutely unbelievable. Adjustable frequencies according to each individual sensitivity, no possible overdose, and optimization of the environment, reduction of fuel consumption even. I have to say, I was very surprised about that, but after all, why should I be surprised? Because whenever you start reharmonizing your whole environment, of course, you can expect betterings in all sides. Augmentation of the quality of the water and the food as well, neutralization of negative thoughts, actions, or attitude, which I was very surprised, and several levels of activity depending on what each individual is able to absorb at some points in their life. And those keys have the capacity to communicate with each other. And I just would like to show you something by remembering you that, in fact, if we are talking about matter or energy, thanks to those two laws, the first one of Einstein, the second one of De Broglie, we can see that energy equal matter, equal frequency. So Einstein himself said, concerning matter, we have been all wrong. What we have called matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. And by using this, that's what I would like to show you, because that's really the piece of hope that I came from Switzerland to share with you tonight, which is...
Absolutely.
Me and my team, which is about half of the room, fortunately, otherwise we would have... So, study of a man, 76 years old, living in Switzerland, Geneva, where 5G...
This was just last month, correct? In the last few weeks?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. That was the 23rd of August, okay? Where 5G antennas had been launched a couple of weeks ago next to his apartment. And the machinery that we have allows us to see how the heart is beating but also what are the rhythmogram, which means the heart rate variability, which is so important because it means the difference in intervals between every heartbeat. And most of the people might think that if all the intervals between every heartbeat is absolutely regular and similar to the previous one, it will be an illustration of a vibrant health. Nothing is less right than that. The more you have different intervals between your heartbeats, and the better it means that your heart is able to adjust itself to the environmental circumstances. So look at that. This man had all his parameters, like adaptability of his cells, vegetative regulation, neurohumoral regulation, psycho-emotional states, complex states index, where more than 650 health parameters have been measured within 5 minutes. And you could just see that these levels were extremely low. And now you could see that this measurement was taken, it's just an example, of course, but which illustrates very well what we are facing since a couple of weeks now as kind of experimentation. You can see it was almost 9 o'clock in the evening. So we installed the keys and we left him during 1 hour until the adjustment could be done. And I would like to show you the result 1 hour later only. And as a
Jacques,
scientist,
let me contextualize. You plugged this key in the facility for
Yes.
1 hour and brought the patient into the field
Yes.
with that key for 1 hour.
Absolutely. That's exactly the case. And I have the honor to tell you that the patient will be able to confirm it himself, because you know very well that most of the time we could have manipulated the results or whatever. But I took the patient with me. He's here tonight, and he will confirm himself. That's Mr. Andres, who is here, and who used to be the former General Secretary of the Association of all European Universities for 37 years.
Well,
no
thank you
less
for
than that. So look at the result. I would ask your attention just to look at the bottom of the screen, because I won't have time to explain you all the things. But what you are perfectly, every single of you is perfectly able to see is the numbers. 13, 27, 7%, 10%, 14%, which is very worrying. Look 1 hour after. That's how he was. And look the day after. You see here, 1 hour after, he was back to 66% of adaptability, and now he's at 98%. It's absolutely unbelievable, and I had really to, I would say, pinch myself in order really to realize that I was not sleeping. And of course, that does not prevent the 5G to continue to be around you, but at least, if we don't want to wait until the government, until the associations, until the institution stop burdening us with this 5G, at least we start now seeing that there are some possibilities to get rid of it, or at least to protect our biological systems. And you can see that as well. That was before, and you can see it in a drawing now, and that was 1 hour after, as you can see. And then it was the day after one night, and you can see that all the parameters evaluated also in a fantastic manner. And we could see it also with the gerontological curve, because he was so much under the stress of the 5G that his biological age was 79 years, although his age is 76. What made him saying something which was so beautiful, he said, "Oh, I realized that I'm older than myself." That was beautiful. And you could see that just after the 1 hour exposition to this BioShield key, his biological age, which is really reflecting your state of health, dropped down to 55 years old. So you've got a young man among you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And it went even better. He was about 49 years old the day after, you could see, 24th of August, and then we stopped making the measurement because I was afraid I should put him, in a kind of baby car or whatever. If I was continuing, that would not have been good for the business. The cerebral activity is so important also. He was completely under an enormous stress and fatigue because the delta waves of the brain normally should take place only during your sleep, when you are in deep sleep. And that was what he was facing now at 9 o'clock p.m. And you can see the state of the brain, and that's exactly the central part that I was telling you about, which is the corpus callosum. And you could see that it was really a very bad situation. And you can look at that 1 hour after, and you can see that we have, again, beta peaks, which means about the attention, and you've got the emotional state index, which has grown up in an incredible manner. And you can see it with the neurohormonal regulation, you can see it with the level of energy, you can see it with so many different interpretations, and the most important is the number of intervals between every heartbeat. There were only 4 of them, which is not a lot, and which has a tendency to show that the heart is no more able to cope with it, because the heart, after all, is one of the most electromagnetic sensitive organs that we have in our body, and which is even 5,000 times more energetic than the brain itself. We have to remind that. So look after that. The number of intervals grew up, vegetative balance index compared to before, tension index, which was twice 0.5 above the level, vegetative balance index also, and after 1 hour, everything calmed down. You could see it also with his level of reflection of energy, which went up also. That's after the activation of the bioshield, and it went even better the day after. And even at the chakra level, at the meridian levels, you could see, for example, with the heart, that you went from 9% to 21%, and that's only one case, because you could already see how much time does it take to treat one case. But I have hundreds of other cases, which are all reflecting the same. So the conclusion...
Sorry, did you just say you've done 100 different cases, case studies?
Absolutely.
And you're seeing the same broad effect?
And that's the reason why I'm saying new studies on large number of subjects are ongoing and will be published when completed, because I can affirm that we have, I wouldn't say a protective technology, because it's like we are trapped in a shell, but I would say a transformative technology which is based on plasmoid activity. And really, I make a lot of honor to the Russian people who have developed this, because I never saw such important results after such a short time in my life. So, as shown in the previous graphs, that's the conclusion, one can notice a massive improvement in all the vitality parameters of the subject of the study. The efficacy of the 5G BioShield USB flash drive is therefore massive at almost immediate and longer term. We can only recommend it to all users concerned to avoid the inconvenience associated with the massive proliferation of electromagnetic waves, the 5G in particular. But I told you at the beginning of my conference that there are 2 avenues that I wanted to explore with you. The 5G BioShield key was one of them, and there is a second one, which is called Presidium formula, which has been developed by an incredible doctor called Marco Ruggiero. And that's another way which is very complementary to the first one. It's not one instead of the others. And this is Dr. Marco Ruggiero. I was so honored to be in touch with him, thanks to Sacha again, to your intermediation. He's a molecular biologist and diagnostic radiology specialist, and is the inventor of several formulas and the protocols like the Ruggiero Clean Heart protocol for detoxification of the body and heavy metals. But he's a world-renowned molecular biologist and radiology specialized with an unparalleled 35 years career. But most of all, he's an author of 225 peer-reviewed papers covering cancer, cardiovascular disease, autism that we talked about, Alzheimer, and other neurodegenerative diseases. And it goes to the effects of electromagnetic fields on human DNA and the role of vitamin D and so on and so forth. So there is a new formula which is called Presidium, which is still not available, but that's the reason why you were really welcome to come here tonight, because that's really like unveiling the future, which will be, Sacha will tell us exactly when. But the Presidium is a breakthrough nutraceutical with a novel formula addressing the ever-increasing human exposure to electromagnetic radiation, but this time from inside, and using a concept that we call microbiome, which is in certain way all the living organisms that you've got in your GI, gastrointestinal tract. And this microbiome has got some extraordinary properties. And Dr. Ruggiero, with whom I was in contact about 1 week ago, told me that he found some very specific microbes and bacteria, etc., which had an incredible capacity, which was to secrete some substances which protected them against the ionizing and non-ionizing effects, which means that those bacteria were not killed by the radioactivity. And so he created a formula in which these competencies and this potential that they have was transferred to us so that we learn ourselves how not to be harmed anymore by those electromagnetic waves, which is one of the most brilliant work I've been facing also in that field. So this all-natural supplement has been formulated by an internationally renowned doctor that I mentioned, but the product predominant application are to shield and to protect the human body from the negative effects of both ionizing and non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation, as I just said previously. And the natural shielding formula is designed to operate where the ultimate damage is happening, which is naturally at the cellular and DNA level. The formula is designed to shield both ionizing and non-ionizing radiation, I said, including 3G, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, cell phone towers, etc., etc. So it means that however grave the situation seems to be today, there are still really some lights, some possibilities, and I'm thinking mostly to the children, because I'm certain that half of the room we are parents, and knowing what we know tonight, I really hope that we will not react by omission the same way as we did previously. This is really what I wish to all of you, and I thank you for your attention.